What up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe Home Security. I have been using my Simply Safe at my new house for about 6 months, and it is awesome. It's so easy to set up, easy to customize for your home's needs, and it's an advanced system, whole home security that put you, your home, and your family's safety first. Basically, when you go online to build your Simply Safe system, there's a whole list of options, from motion detectors to glass break sensors, heat and water sensors, door open sensors, security cameras, indoor and outdoor, a video doorbell, remote key fobs for your keychains, and then, of course, the app, all of which connect to each other super easily, super simple to set up and add new devices, super easy to monitor using that Simply Safe app at home. There's 24/7 professional monitoring, and Simply Safe's agents take action the moment a threat is detected, dispatching police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home. Simply Safe has proprietary video verification technology so that monitoring agents can visually confirm the threat in order to get higher priority 911 dispatch. The monitoring plans are very affordably priced at just $1 a day with no long-term contract or hidden fees, because feeling safe at home shouldn't break the bank. This system is great for apartments. It's great for houses. It's great if you wanted to keep your older relatives safe. It's great if you go out of town a lot and you want more than just an alarm. You want something that could tell you if there's a fire or a flood, a break-in, all kinds of stuff. It's pet-friendly, and you can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/tire. Go to simplysafe.com/tire today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off with interactive monitoring at simplysafe.com/tire. Also brought to you today by Evercoat Body Shop. I don't know if you've ever even thought about doing your own body work at home. Maybe you're a professional, maybe you're not. Maybe you're just restoring an old classic or fixing up your daily driver. But whatever your project is, Evercoat Body Shop has the right product for your project. Evercoat takes the guesswork out of body work. It's a simple 3-step process. You just prep, fill, and sand. Their perfect mix guide makes it easy to get the right ratio of filler and cream hardener, drying in about 15 minutes, and sands up to 50% faster than the competition, so there's less waiting around. Evercoat is the #1 brand used by professionals, and they can help you get professional results too. So head on down to your nearest Advanced Auto Parts store and ask for Evercoat Body Shop products by name. New sponsor this episode, Berryman. You ever heard of Berryman? It's the gold standard in fuel additives. Their product quickly disperses moisture and dissolves gum, varnish, and other fuel residues from the entire fuel system, fuel tank, lines, injectors, valves, rings, and pistons. It's uniquely formulated with Berryman's exclusive high-energy solvent technology, and regular use ensures higher compression, fewer repairs, lower operating costs, and increased spark plug and injector life. Berryman's fuel additives are catalytic converter safe, O2 sensor safe, and here at my business, Westside Collector Car Storage, we have a lot of cars that do a lot of sitting. Cars in long-term storage, vintage cars, high-value cars that their owners really care about. And we have started using the Berryman products to not only clean out the fuel systems of cars that get driven regularly, but are old cars, but also as a fuel stabilizer for cars that are in long-term storage to resist that fuel breakdown and the negative effects of leaving cars with fuel sitting in the tank for a very long time. Berryman products are all American made since 1918, 104 years, folks. And Berryman is available at your favorite automotive retailer or auto parts store, or of course at berrymanproducts.com. Check them out and keep your engine safe and running great. And of course, as always, we're brought to you by Off the Record. They have a system that is exceptional. I love Off the Record because I don't have to worry about getting pulled over, getting ticketed, having that affect my insurance, having that affect my finances, and the speeding ticket system, right, is not just the ticket. It's then the insurance, the court system. It's all a racket, folks. It's not really designed to keep people safe. It is designed to extract money from you. Exit that system by always fighting your tickets with Off the Record. They have coverage and a network of attorneys that they will connect you with, qualified attorneys in your area that cover 97% of the U.S. population. So wherever you are, whether you're near your home, on a road trip away from home, have that Off the Record app on your phone, or you can go to offtherecord.com/TST. If you've got the Off the Record app, you can input code TST10, offtherecord.com/TST, or code TST10 on the Off the Record app. That'll get you 10% off all legal services through 2023. And frankly, we'll probably extend the codes past that because it's been a very successful partnership. A lot of you use Off the Record. I've gotten so many emails from people that used Off the Record successfully, and they were happy with the fact that they are not part of the financial system that they didn't really want to be a part of in the first place. Got those tickets off their record and no insurance penalties or anything like that. Offtherecord.com/TST or code TST10 on the Off the Record app. All right, folks, on this episode of the podcast, my old pal Alex Roy is in studio. You may remember him from his cannonballing exploits of 15 years ago, or as the author of the book The Driver. More recently, he is an employee at ARGO AI, which is a self-driving car research and development company. He's an expert in autonomous vehicles, what they are and what they are not. And I'm sure that today, I'm recording this before we do the show, but I'm sure that today on the show we are going to discuss the state of the autonomous vehicle industry, the truths and the lies. And it's always a great time to hang out with Alex Roy on the Smoking Tire Podcast.
Someone who shall remain nameless came to me and said, I've got the rights to, he said, have you seen Top Gear Live? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen Top Gear Live. And he's like, I love the idea of like the circus and cars. He's like, but we're not going far enough. It's not like American enough. We need to do the American version of that. I'm like, well, don't we have that? We have like
Top Gear America Live.
Yeah, we have demolition derbies. We have like monster truck shows.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to go all the way. I want it to be like WWF in cars. And so we talk, and it's like, well, and we'll do it like, we'll pick like race weekends and just add a day, and it'll just be like that. I'm like, cool. So we went through the exercise of trying to imagine what the characters would be, and I'm like, well, obviously you have to have a character named Mancano.
I think all the characters should be man something.
Yeah.
Manifest. Manfred.
Yeah.
Mancano.
Manifold.
You just have to know our target demo. It's 98%. There's a
kids.
There's a truck and trailer race coming up very soon. That's where like you're like it's like
you had a tow?
a pickup truck towing like a boat.
Oh, cool.
And it's figure eight racing with that shit. It's figure eight trailer racing. It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
I would watch that with if that was what Robo Race was. I would watch that. If it was like Robo Russian Roulette with cars.
Robo Russian Roulette would be.
Yeah. Like first, you crash, you're out.
Did you see the news this morning that Netflix is going to come out with a Squid Games reality show?
Oh, great.
Lord, here we go.
And the prize is $4.56 million.
Isn't that
the biggest prize ever in reality TV?
Is it related to like the collective debt of the contestants?
Someone said as on the way over here that we're one step closer to actual like gladiatorial combat.
Yeah, dude, the Running Man seems closer than ever.
Yeah,
and I was just talking to somebody. I your boss at Argo, Brian. I was talking to him about Demolition Man briefly.
Yeah.
And he was like, "We're getting there. We're getting there." I'm initializing full Demolition Man status at my new house, where my guest bathroom has 3 seashells.
Wait a second. Hold on. That's 2 topics to discuss. First, Demolition Man. Why isn't that a house flipping show? That's a
really
great
funny
idea.
Stallone house flipping show.
It's like a guy who hates everything.
Except the house is terrible and they have to fucking tear the whole thing down and start over.
Every time. Oh, honey, I love it.
One of the best days of my life was demoing the building that was here.
What was here?
Just a shitty old office building. Actually, it was Howard Hughes's administration building.
And was it the same shell? Did you preserve the shell?
No,
it's all gone.
No, it was like 1,000 square foot stucco piece of shit.
Did you save any of the fingernails?
I took it. I saved a jar of piss. It was a dentist's office when I tore it down.
He saved the seashells.
I went in with a fucking sledge, which was fun, but ultimately I took it down with a backhoe in about 30 minutes. It was fun as fuck. The contractors were like, I was like, "This is cool." They're like, "You want to do it?" I was like, "Can I?" And they're like, "Well, you're paying. What are you going to break?" I was like, "Yes, I do want to tear it."
When's the last time you went to Vegas?
For the 400Z launch.
Because I was just there, and there was, speaking backhoes, there was right behind the strip was the highway. Is it the 10? The 15.
Yeah.
And going north on the 15, on the west side of the 15, I noticed there's
Dig
like
this.
What is that?
Construction Fantasy Camp.
That's the place.
Yeah, dig this. Yeah.
You've been.
I have.
Tell me about it, because
It's fun as
I want
fuck.
to go.
It's really fun.
So you just drive stuff.
It's
and
the most
crush.
wholesome thing you could do in Vegas. Yeah.
So-
Heavy machinery, break shit.
And what does that cost?
It's not a couple $100. It's not expensive. I
And
mean,
you-
by Vegas standards, it's not expensive.
Right. So, and you get to.
They have a variety of equipment. They have bulldozers. They
Yeah.
have excavator, backhoes. They have all kinds of shit. Forklifts.
I can't believe I didn't know about this.
It's
sooner.
fun. It's been there for a couple of years.
And is there a minimum age?
I'm sure there is. I was over it,
Is
so
it like
didn't apply to
3?
me.
Because I would like to take Coco there.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't see why they wouldn't let a kid do it. I mean, it's probably like 12 or something at least. You might need a driver's license. I don't know. But I was on a terrible reality show once where I had to operate an excavator, and I won that particular with Brittany Boddington. Remember her?
Yeah.
We were on the Ford Focus rally, which was like the amazing race, but everyone drove a Ford Focus.
And it was these camps where you do the backhoe and excavation, is it always about destroying? Do you ever get to do like
to create,
to build?
Well, on the reality show, I erected. I didn't destroy. They had cars that were crushed into bales, and you had to stack 7. The first person to stack 7 bales vertically won the challenge, and it took me like 12 minutes or something to stack 7 bales, which it would have taken a professional about 45 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. Zach, can you look up the prices of Dig This in Vegas? See,
I want to go back and do it now.
you might notice, audience, on the video feed that I have to turn my whole body to look at Zach
because he's got neo neck.
My neck is completely fucked.
Yeah, Matrix neck.
I've taken 4 hot showers in the last 24 hours. I have to do these stretches where basically I just ping pong my neck back and forth. I went to PT. Look at that.
Excellent.
That looks like some kind of a competition. Looks like people are competing there. I mean, really, this was a genius business model. Big Dig Excavator, $299.
Wait, 90 minutes long for $300?
Yeah, buddy.
It's
a pretty good value.
Especially with inflation, it's a great value. Wow. Wow.
I think there's more than one too. I think there's a car crushing one, $750.
Yeah.
Aggression session.
Where's that? Oh yeah, that's what that's called. Oh my God, the aggression session.
Crush a car here. Wow.
Yeah. I recommend this.
I can't believe I didn't do it. It's absolutely. Talk about a corporate team building exercise. Companies always pick these like weak team building exercises.
We should make sure Hannah knows about this one too. She always has good team building for her shit. Yeah.
I got to ask you about the 3 seashells. I know this is a recurring topic. I've never heard anyone really
I don't know how to use them.
offer a thesis.
Of what they were?
Yeah. Well, I know there's three of them. This is
I've
seashell.
read various online theses about how to use the 3 seashells. The consensus is one is a pure scraper. Right? That's one is a straight scrape. And then the other 2 you create
like chopsticks.
yeah, you almost make a little scooping, pinching mitt out of them. I don't know, but you know how my bathroom now has that book in it that says how to teach your cat about gun safety?
No, I haven't
It's
seen
kind of
that.
a wow moment.
You don't let me in that bathroom.
It's a funny. No, it's the guest bathroom, but like the book is actually like crazy right-wingy trash, but the cover is exceptional, and everyone comes out of the bathroom after peeing, laughing at the book. And so I really want people to see the 3 seashells when they go piss in my new bathroom.
I've been looking for a good a bathroom library, like Leave. I have a guest bathroom in my new apartment, and I haven't found the right one. Years ago, there was a.
Talk about book selection or
book
like
selection.
literally the shelf?
No,
okay,
well,
yeah.
book selection. When I was in college, I was a greeter at Urban Outfitters. And,
I buy that.
Yeah. And there was a wonderful book at the checkout line, and I bought it, and you can still buy it, and now you can buy it like leather bound, like a keepsake. It's called Taxi Driver Wisdom.
Oh, yeah, I know that book. Yeah, I definitely know that book.
I'm telling you, just randomly open to a page today, and you will
great.
find timeless wisdom. And a great one, my 2 favorite ones, and the more relevant now, like the market crashing, is on the passage of time. And the quote is, time always pass, some faster for some than others, Vietnam or over, 6th Avenue construction never over.
I mean,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, while pooping, that seems extremely profound.
And the other one, it's like, the economy. On the economy, the economy's bad when the guys at the gas station get good looking. Just go. I was just at the gas station.
Pretty good. Here in Los Angeles, they're actors. But did you in college have a whole apartment that was basically decorated by Urban Outfitters? I feel like you were that guy.
I had like the color, the color palette.
Yeah,
blacks and browns and some beiges.
I had a friend in college who went to Urban Outfitters and bought everything, all the pillows and blankets, and he built this fucking loft bed that underneath there was like
a desk,
a pillow. No, it was like a pillow grotto almost where you could lounge and do mushrooms. He bought so much shit at Urban Outfitters that by the time I realized, like when I went to his apartment, I was like, "What have you done?" And there's this girl there who I've never met, and who is she? She's the sales girl from Urban Outfitters who was so impressed / horrified at what this guy bought. She just had to see what he did in the fucking room. So it all went into one dorm room.
I had a girlfriend in high school named Sky, who was very cool, much smarter than me and anyone else I knew. And when I got to college, she called me up and she said she was working for a literary magazine doing a column about college-age male apartments.
Yeah.
Looking for guys who lived alone and had, what they had in there. And I'm like, oh, you got to see my place. I have great taste. I'm completely unique and different, unlike anyone else you'll ever meet at any age. And I absolutely would like you to see my apartment. And she comes over and she hands me a piece of paper. I'm like, what's this? She's like, I wrote this down before I came here. I'm like, why? She's like,
prediction?
Yeah, it's a prediction list. She says, you have a tall, skinny metal lamp. They were like an LED, not LED, whatever, like a halogen bulb on the end with like a little articulated thing. I'm like, yeah. And she went down. She was like 80% correct.
And she called it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you wear your decor on your sleeve.
And after that, I vowed no more halogen. No.
Oh, halogen's bad.
Yeah.
My current house is is peak halogen, and I hate it so much. The bulbs are fucking impossible. Anyway. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice
Matthew.
to see you. We had a nice dinner the other night.
Yes.
Delicious.
I like a flight of meat.
A flight of meat? We all got flights of meat. It was good, actually. And hanging out with Brian, the CEO of Argo.
He also likes a flight of meat.
Very interesting dude, and we had some really interesting conversations. Did you make it to the Rivian Hub?
No,
God, I'm so disappointed.
There was a lot of traffic.
If you didn't end up on that helicopter yesterday, Hannah was like, "Where should I meet Alex for coffee?" And I was like, "The Rivian Hub." Yes. And she was like, "Great, that's a good idea." But you have to go over there.
I'm going to head over there later today. I've got to take pictures of this Taycan, and I'll take them there.
Do it in front of the Rivian Hub. No, it's hysterical. But the Snitza data dump thing came out this morning.
Yep.
I watched Niedermeyer and Moody's stream for like a little bit.
Me too.
But I wanted, you're now in this in the space, the true self-driving car space, where the cars have 6-figure sensor suites, triple redundancies, engineers trained in safety procedures driving them. Is that Argo safety thing still down over there? Alan Hall sent me the 50 or 60 page how we train our safety drivers pamphlet.
Yep.
And it was so interesting. I realized how little I knew and how thorough Argo was.
When I read it, I was like, who wrote this?
Yeah, it was good.
Like a lot of work went into it.
No, not there's that. You might have taken it home. I gave it to someone.
I have to preface anything I say that I don't represent Argo on this show. But I have a point of view.
But you do work there.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
But you're not here to give the corporate line.
Yes.
But
correct.
But you've now as part of your job, you fly around the country and get rides in other fucking people's stuff.
I mean, anybody can go to
anyone
Phoenix.
Can. No, anybody can. But you've done it.
Yeah.
So what is if you're an optimist?
Yeah.
What is the state of that industry right now as an optimist?
Oh, I'm an optimist in general.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this stuff. Have you seen the TV show For All Mankind? Mm-mm. It's on Apple Plus, and it's a science fiction show about how the space race would have gone differently if the Soviets landed on the moon first.
Okay.
And so the entire timeline of space exploration and like settlement on the moon and the Mars is advanced by like 20 years.
If the Russians had done
If the Russian had landed on the moon first,
Huh.
which kicks off in 1969, massive investment by the United States, a completely different timeline emerges. So the show continues for another 40 years. Season 3 just started, and they're going to Mars. And it's fascinating for your student of history to see the same historical characters are alive in the alternate timeline. They make largely the same choices, but some of them make different choices, and elections go differently. Mm-hmm. And so there's a moon base in the 80s, and then there's Mars exploration begins in the 90s. And so the timeline of autonomous vehicles, there's been these pivot points, these forks, multiple times in recent decades, where everyone's like, it's about to be here.
Yeah.
It's here. It's going to be here. And then, of course, most famous one in recent memory is Elon Musk saying in 2016, it's a year away.
It's a year away. Robo-taxis.
Anything, drive anywhere, level 5 is a year away. I promise next year.
Yeah.
Cross country.
Which you said every year for 8 years now.
Yeah. And so.
Or 6 years.
I'm more optimistic now. Let me rephrase that. I'm more optimistic now that people will understand how long it's going to take. Because even true believers in Tesla level 5 full self-driving, whatever you want to call it, are like, well, maybe I shouldn't spend the $10,000 or $12,000 because it's not really going to be a robotaxi anytime soon. And imagine going back in time to 1890, and someone saying, you're going to have an elevator in your house, I promise you. By the end of 1871.
Right.
Whatever.
And someone had just kind of invented the elevator.
Yeah. And mind you, elevators have been around by that point for maybe 2,000 years. But they were big.
They were lifted up by Jews for most of those 2,000 years. They were Jew-powered hoists.
So, what if you want? So the technology's out there.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be affordable and you want it to be convenient and useful, it's got to be productized. It's got to be a product. And think about all the things that come with that. So there's got to be someone you can call.
Yeah.
It's like, when's it going to be here? There's an issue with that. I don't understand how to use it. Like, oh, it's not available here, but it's available there. Like, elevators were around. They were, ice cream. I just wrote a column that come out this week about ice cream. So, like, ice cream, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Great product, was around for thousands of years. But for ice cream to become ubiquitous,
we all had to have freezers.
Yeah, and freezers require electricity. And then you also had to run electrical lines that the community would be like, we're cool with electrical lines in the street.
Yeah.
And then, Edison and Westinghouse had to fight it out over DC or AC power. If DC power had won, you would have had your own generator in your house. Everyone would have needed one because it doesn't transmit power far. And so for anything to become affordable and popular and trusted and easy to buy, easy to use, it's got to be a product.
Yeah.
And it's not a supply chain issue as much as like a product chain issue. All the things this bottle of coffee, everything required for me to have this, the bottler, someone's got to make a cheap bottle to put. There's a lot of stuff goes into that, and a lot of stuff is not the responsibility of the company selling the final product. It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So you can not Neil Gaiman, who's the writer, who said, the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I've heard the quote, yeah.
Yeah, so there's automation all around us all the time. And this is just another, peg in the board of automation that's coming.
Yeah.
And once it, quote unquote, works, meaning it's convenient, easy to use, we trust it, it's safe, there's still an execution issue. Which company is going to have the great leadership and actually market it well, advertise well, and survive when another company that's a bad actor does something unfortunate.
Right.
And we
already do have it in some, like, farming. Like, there's, like, autonomous combines that can go do a field.
Yeah.
Somewhat autonomously, where you sit in your comfortable house and watch some monitors and maybe program a route that it follows, right? But the kind of like, like when we had Missy on the show talking about top down versus bottom up, the way that a machine understands the world around it and the facial expressions and intentions of humans when you've got to mix humans. And like, if you were to somehow ban human driving entirely, you'd be further along with autonomous driving than we are now. Yeah. But we don't want that.
But not only do we not want it, it's not possible. Yeah. because the nature, just like the For All Mankind TV show, like the rate of technological progress is whatever it is, but the rate of technological adoption depends on culture.
Right.
And the more honest companies are, the more culture is willing to talk and negotiate and like assimilate technology into it. I mean, if your phone, I'm trying to think, like if every car, like Torchinsky made the joke, if every car had a safety spike on the steering wheel, the roads would be a lot safer. No one would want to drive.
Yeah.
So, and then look at all the consequences of that would be people are going to have to start walking a lot because those safety spikes are getting in the way of our driving.
Well, I think there's the infrastructure issue is like just as important as the tech issue for an AV. Our world is built around human-driven cars, human-driven gas-powered cars. Furthermore, and so until we like understand that like government's not actually the enemy, that it's actually here to serve the things that we need, we're almost hitting like an impasse where they're trying to make AVs work in the human-driven world instead of setting up this more equitable world with shared EVs and autonomous cars and stuff like that.
I ride in the ARGO vehicles. I've ridden in the Waymo vehicles, and I was in Vegas checking out these motional vehicles. I'm optimistic that multiple companies will deploy AVs in streets where there's human-driven vehicles. The thing that I'd like to see, and anyone who knows anything about, Alyssa Walker was on your show.
Yeah.
People, if vehicles with four wheels and tires, no matter how they get from A to B, are the primary mode of getting around a city, the city's not going to be as healthy or happy or as nice a place to live as a city that has a mixed environment of walkable neighborhoods and safe streets. So people have to be able to bike and have alternatives. Why the concept of throughput, like how many people can get through a given geometry of road or space is everything. Mm-hmm. And if only one person can get down a block in a given hour versus 100, what kind of neighborhood are you going to have? And I'm looking for a place to raise Coco. I like her to be in a neighborhood where she can learn to ride a bike safely. That wasn't New York City where I grew up, although I loved growing up in New York. It wasn't a great place to ride a bike in the 80s. And looking at LA or Vegas or Phoenix or any of the cities I've been to in the last week, urban planning is one of those things where good government is necessary and absolutely possible because you see examples of good government all over the world.
Sure.
You also see examples of bad government.
This city is fucked.
And so to generate decisions that have multi-generational consequences need to be really measured and smart.
Yeah.
And NIMBYism is I don't want to say it's like blanket bad, but it's not helpful when it's selecting when it's not in the service of the community.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it around.
I live in Venice, man. Believe me. All of a sudden, they got the folks that were camping on the beach over the last 2 years. They got most of them into temporary housing, some of them into permanent housing. Some didn't want to leave, and they made them leave the beach, but they allowed them to camp in front of the Venice Library on Venice Boulevard. And I just came home the other day from a trip up north to Monterey from a work gig, and all of it was gone. All those tents were gone. It was police taped off, and there was a cop car there with 3 cops just standing around drinking coffee, bullshitting. I would love to know that those people got into safe housing, but I don't. But in Venice, where real estate is now priced out a lot of the locals, and I know Venice is also destination homeless for a lot of. If you were homeless in Minneapolis, I'd imagine you'd make your way to Venice. But it's really it's never like really bothered me personally. But there's a lot of folks who are, worried about whatever goes on in the camps and the value of their real estate, of course, as well.
Look, everything, the self-driving cars, the space race, homelessness, anything, for any given topic, the media narrative, the on-the-ground discussion, like oscillates around like a mean of progress. If history goes like this, okay, but
Alex is making an uphill 30-degree incline.
Up to the right. But the way it's talked about publicly, like in the media, but also on the ground in community board meetings, oscillates, like orbits around the mean of what should happen. To extreme, this can't work, this is going to work. This can't work, this is going to work. And you can see the extreme wings of both political parties in this country grab onto it depending on like the
whichever side it's on, they push it the other way.
And when that coincides with an election, very good things can happen or very bad things can happen.
Yeah.
And one can only hope that there's some stabilizing force, or like mitigating elements in like the public discourse to bring it back to reality. And when they get it right, then the force of history will move to accelerate progress for time, and get it wrong can delay things. That's why I love alternative history shows like For All Mankind, because in that show, the Soviets get the moon first, which means the United States we need more astronauts now. Soviets put a woman in space, we need 20 women in space in the 70s. And that's an interesting thought experiment. One might say that, if the Cold War hadn't happened, the internet might not have arrived when it did, because there wouldn't have been so much investment in redundant communication systems, ARPANET, and then eventually the internet we use. So
I just watched this week's John Oliver last night.
Yeah.
Which had a little segment about it's about monopolistic tech companies basically, and I was really too young to notice at the time, but the AT&T, the Ma Bell monopoly that was broken up. The breakup of that company in the 80s and the reduction in exorbitant dial-up fees that once people had a choice of where to buy something, that was a key factor in what made the internet possible, because now you weren't getting charged these insane amounts of money for dialing into the AOL or Prodigy.
I was one of those people.
Prodigy server or whatever the fuck it was. Yeah.
But all of this, I'm an eternal optimist, because someone's going to develop it, and science fiction is filled with examples of stuff going bad, which is probably healthy because it sets us up for conversations about what happens when that technology actually arrives. So we have a choice. I mean, we're always free to choose, what things look like if we read real things and have real information about it.
Right. What is, because you've been in a bunch of these AV taxis, right? From Argo, from Waymo and whatever. Best case scenario, what does that experience look and feel like?
You don't even notice it. I mean, I get in the car, I pull out my phone, I use it as if I was in any other taxi with a human driver, and if I don't look up, then the thing's good.
Yeah.
But if I do look up, I'm like, what was that about? And then one of two things can happen. If one goes in as a pessimist, and the vehicle brakes and you don't know why, either the vehicle, if it's equipped with LiDAR and extra sensors, it can see much further better than we can. It's entirely possible the vehicle saw something that I as a passenger didn't see. And it has happened to me in multiple companies' cars that I looked up and I kept looking up, and then we came around a corner and there was somebody behind a vehicle. Right. There was a kid behind a truck or a dog or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I'm glad that happened. I don't know what a human driver would have done. But if the thing is just, braking too often, then you have a comfort issue, and it may not be safety related. I mean, it's like if you go in agnostic and pay attention, you'll start to see things that are not obvious. And when we get in a car with a human driver, the assumption is that person wants to live. Right? Yeah. Okay, that's the assumption.
That's actually very
but that's
funny.
not necessarily attached to they have the skill to keep us both alive.
Yeah.
We don't know going in. And there have been some high profile crashes. There was a guy from 60 Minutes a few years ago was killed in a car crash on the West Side Highway, like a black car driver. Like you would assume a guy is like a higher level of skill, I guess. But when you get into an AV, you do know, or at least I'm going to say from the good actor companies, that it has one goal, which is to get there without touching anything. And that the skills baked into it are in service of that goal. There's no distractions. Now, how well it does that depends on the company. But there's a lot of people at companies who take it seriously and have been accused of being maybe, too patient. But patience is a good thing. Patience is a real good thing.
Yeah.
If I would not want, I would not want to ride in a vehicle by a company famous for being impatient.
Yeah.
And so when you go into a taxi with a human driver, you think he wants to live, but this guy's hitting the accelerator and pumping the brakes all the time. It's a very uncomfortable ride. Now you start getting curious, like what's going through this person's mind? Are they just a bad driver, or do they have a mix of impatience but great safety? It's possible. They just may not care about comfort at all.
Yeah.
So autonomous vehicles need to have all this stuff baked in the right way. Getting to from A to B, comfort and safety. And that's something that humans often don't have. And be able, again, you take a cab driver out of New York, you could probably put him almost anywhere in the world. He's going to be pretty good.
Oh, I've had cab drivers in New York where I was like, do you want to do gumball next year? Because we could win.
But, and then you also got cab drivers from,
You know what's fucking bad is when a cab driver or an Uber driver is willing to push limits or break laws on my behalf, I see that as a positive. I know it's bad, but if you risk your license to get me to my destination faster,
25%, 5 stars.
Yeah. I know that's not cool, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, look, in in the late 1890s, you had elevators began to proliferate from a lot of companies, and today 5 companies have half the global market for elevators. And it didn't become clear that was elevators were going to become a thing, like a real business, until the 1890s. It took about 10, 15 years of M&A and bankruptcies, and other companies had to get together and combine technologies. Autonomous vehicles are starting to happen right now.
You specifically use the elevator analogy because that is most like your definition of a true autonomous vehicle, where you could press a button and then zone out completely and end up where you're supposed to end up?
That would seem to be a yes, but actually that's not the reason I pick elevators. It's because the business history of elevators most closely mirrors the business history up till this point of autonomous vehicles.
Okay.
It would be too easy to say, oh, elevators just vertical autonomy. It's not a one-to-one correlation of similarities in terms of the actual technology, because you have a single track,
rails.
like a rail.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, by that lens, you would say, well, they're more like trains.
Yeah.
But the business of trains and the business of elevators are very different.
Sure.
Whereas the business of elevators and autonomous vehicles, very similar.
So elevators work in a very dense and mostly commercial area, right?
Well, actually,
and they're more rarely privately owned.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In fact, there is no reason in most people's homes to have an elevator.
Right.
In the same way that most people live in cities shouldn't need a car.
Right.
They do, because the cities themselves are architected over many generations as a consequence of some inferior choices predating our births.
Mm-hmm. And lobbying and political power and more.
You know the history.
Yeah.
So the other thing about autonomous vehicles is interesting or elevators and autonomous vehicles is that so many things had to fall into place around them for them to become a good product. So, and interestingly, escalators also exist.
Right.
Which are also vertical mobility, but require, they do different things, they have different requirements, and there are no controls, they're just always running, which is why escalators are like driver assistance. Mm-hmm. And an escalator can be perfectly designed, but if you don't step on at the right time and hold the railing, something bad can happen, like driver assistance.
You don't tie your shoes.
Yeah. And so once you look at the business history of those things, and even kind of like a philosophical history of how they are designed, you see the similarities to automation in cars. An escalator, no matter how many escalators you put in a building, it's a lot easier to ride an elevator to the 20th floor. You don't want to get off 19 times to get to the top floor. That's why an elevator is a better product if your goal is that. Mm-hmm. In the same way that driver assistance, no matter how many features you pack into a driver assistance system, if the driver doesn't know how they work or sucks, it's not going to be a safe car.
Right.
So,
but if you wanted to get 100 people up one story, the most efficient in the least amount of time and energy,
it's an escalator.
But if you need to get 5 people to the 20th story, then you want an elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we need fucking subways. What you're saying is in the city we need goddamn subways.
Trains are good. Listen, every problem in society is solved by understanding the system. Is not solved by making one thing work better and ignoring the rest. Everything is in equilibrium.
Right.
Every neighborhood has a different equilibrium of the best way to get around. And optimally, it's not only one way. If everyone's got to drive, no one will get anywhere. If everybody walked, cities would never grow. Mm-hmm. And if everybody rode bikes, well, maybe it's an interesting balance. But in snow, sleet conditions, you see the tweet by somebody tweeted, the former ambassador to Denmark, I think, tweeted, when I was working at the embassy in Denmark, my embassy driver said he couldn't afford to buy a car. What a poor country. And like the king of Denmark and the transport minister and all these people be like, what? Really? Have you been to Denmark?
Isn't Copenhagen one of the most expensive cities in the world?
The king takes his children to school in a cargo bike. He loves it.
Yeah.
And so, if everything is a nail, hammer's all you're going to think you want to own.
Yeah. When you get reports and surveys and whatever from other people that aren't as well educated about the systems who get a ride in an AV? Do they become more optimistic or less optimistic after their ride?
Well, is your question whether people get more optimistic after a ride?
After riding in an AV that's operated by Waymo or Cruise or Argo?
Well, I have not ridden in a cruise vehicle. I think the Waymo rides are good. I mean, I've been in them in Chandler. I just got a ride in San Francisco. In fact, they invited me, and it was good. Like, I liked it. And I ride in the Argo cars in Miami Beach, which is, I mean,
Miami's an interesting place.
It's a tough place to drive at all.
It's a shit show.
Yeah,
it's as close to South American lawlessness as you will find.
I always say that I don't represent Argo when I go out and talk, but I ride in our cars all the time. I think they're great. Like, if I didn't, I wouldn't work there. I think it's. I'm proud of the product. I think you have to come away impressed because all we see in the media is like these things can't work, or they're going to work. They're awesome. Which these two extremes are absurd. You get it yourself and you see for yourself, and after a couple of rides, you're like, hey, like, wow, this might actually be a thing. If you ride in them all the time like I do, you're like, this is totally a thing. The work that remains to be done is expanding where they work well, and then all the other stuff, the stuff that we take for granted with Uber, like their app, it works for 10 years.
Yeah.
And my only complaint about ride-hail apps is, besides the prices recently, is that the GPS in a dense urban center, like with tall buildings, doesn't always locate me accurately. Yeah. But beyond that, the rest of the ride-hail product of like Uber or Lyft was baked years ago with a very easy-to-use app. And so AVs need that too. They need that too.
Yeah.
And I wish, because driving and parking in Miami is so expensive, I wish that the service was available now, because if I order an Uber every day to get to Miami Beach, I'd spend like thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
It's pricey. So, and also, it's a driver shortage. So I can't get a car quickly if I need one. And I don't want to drive because the time I save getting my own car to get there is lost by looking for parking. And valet times are also, crazy.
Yeah.
And they're crazy almost everywhere. So, I mean, but some of that would be offset if there was also a train. And so the more you step back, the more you realize that AV is like any other thing. You want it to fit into a system. I want to open Google Maps. I want to see a bunch of great choices that are affordable and accurate ETAs. And if I have that, like, my life's better.
Yeah.
And so nothing is a cure-all, and nothing should ever be sold as a cure-all, because that person isn't thinking about the system that improves our quality of life.
Well, I feel like that person is probably thinking about individuals, and also both in terms of who they can help, individuals, and who they could blame if something goes wrong. We're such like an individualistic society. Like, look at guns. You know what I mean? That guy's crazy. That's why. He killed all those people. Nothing would have stopped that crazy guy.
If only there was a solution for this.
If only there could be they don't say, well, there's actually systematic ways to prevent or improve the situation. So but I've always kind of said that, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'm open to being wrong, that if we had autonomous taxis, Are we really doing anything beyond just not having to pay people anymore and eliminating certain people's livelihoods? Or does it, I would think if we're going to do something like eliminating taxi drivers, then we would also really need to start talking about universal basic income and other things like that. If you're going to start automating fast food workers and automating fucking drivers of things, there's a lot of people who do those jobs, and they need to find a way to survive. So maybe we can UBI it or something. But like when I was speaking what you just said right now, and when I spoke to Brian the other night, you guys both kind of focused on the potential downsides of human-driven cars.
Listen, actually, there's great upsides to human-driven cars, and there's also a historical precedent for this exact topic. So, in the early days of elevators, you needed a human.
You did.
And there's this myth that automatic elevators eliminated jobs, and then a bunch of people were just out of work. It's not what happened. So in the early days of elevators, you needed someone to rotate the mechanism, press the button. I'm not quite an engineer, but someone who knew how it worked.
Yeah.
Open and close the gate. Over the course of from 1870s through 1900, you had dozens, maybe probably hundreds of companies in the United States alone, each developing an individual piece of automation. By 1900, all the pieces required to completely automate elevators and eliminate operators existed, but operators remained. And they remained for two reasons. They were seen as a luxury. Mm-hmm. They were actually, they're also considered a safety requirement.
Sure.
The person knows how this works, so I need to have a person. So the luxury and the safety. So elevators were installed in commercial buildings, and these operators were there. You often even had a greeter in the hallway before you get in to be like, so-and-so is going to take you up now. Yeah. And so in 1946, there was a strike in New York City of elevator operators, and the city basically shut down because nobody could get up to work. And the mayor cut a deal, and after that, there was like, well, what can we do about avoiding an economic shutdown of a city if this happens again? That required elevator redesign. Now, mind you, Otis and other companies were selling fully automated elevators starting back like 40 years earlier, but the legacy base of installed elevators had human controls. Many of the newer elevators installed in the 20s and 30s were fully automated, but still had the human who wasn't necessary.
Just there in a little monkey suit pressing a button.
So 1946 was not like a watershed year where suddenly operators just went away. It was the year that people thought, well, okay, are they absolutely necessary, partially necessary? Let's think about this. So 99% ubiquity of elevator operators in 1946, 1970, 1%. So 20
years,
20,
not an instant
correct.
change.
And a few things had to happen for that to happen. Elevators with legacy controls had to be updated.
Retrofitted. Emergency phones.
An intercom system to the basement. Now, was there ever a movement of former elevator operators asking for elevators to remain exactly the same for a couple of days, weeks?
Yeah.
But what happened was, at peak elevator operator, I don't know what the exact number was, 1946, call it X. The elevator industry employs more people today than it did in 1946 in totality, because all that updating, everything had to happen required more people. But the people were moved in regarding what they did in relationship to the technology. They were moved into maintenance, upgrade, service, hardware, sales, and automation does this. But it often takes decades to play out because nothing happens overnight. There was never going to be a day where autonomous vehicles turned on and worked everywhere.
Sure.
It's never going to happen. And no, there's no technology in history has ever happened like that. But what has happened is over the course of years, during which the technology isn't the only thing that has to evolve, the businesses have to evolve too. And the businesses have to learn what they need. They have to hire for new jobs that didn't exist before, and the people have to move into those jobs. Mm-hmm. So the question is, the friction is when companies aren't honest and people don't understand what is happening.
Yeah.
And so I'm speaking for the companies I'm familiar with, and it's not just the one I work for. Many companies in autonomous vehicles are trying to hire right now. And some of them, like ARGO, are hiring for full-time roles, which are great for people that they need as they expand over decades to make the technology ubiquitous. So I am not concerned about the folks who drive taxis now, because as you can see in Miami, for it to work as a business, the system of moving around in cars is going to have a combination of human-driven and autonomous vehicles. Even today, I have a choice when I open like the Lyft app. I have a choice. Which one do I want? And depending what I'm doing, I may want one or the other. My mother is going to want a human driver to talk to.
Yeah. So funny. Hannah brought that up the other night. She said if you've got, when we were walking home from dinner, she was like, if I was my grandmother, I would want a human driver. Of course. Because otherwise it would seem like a very lonely system.
Well, and what will that look like? So instead of a person who may or may not be, they all have, as I said before, hopefully they want to live. Okay,
baseline,
but instead of a
baseline non-suicidal driver.
But more importantly, like you're absolutely going to have a choice in the future of a vehicle. It might be human driven, it might not be. But it might also be autonomous with a person.
With a safety driver. Or
not
whatever.
Even a safety driver.
A valet.
It's a new type of job that doesn't quite exist yet. Although I've seen a startup, what are they called, in Miami? Because it's
like a telehealth conversationalist.
Well, I think in person has value because people have value. They have to technology that removes people from each other and separates them physically has a lot of downsides.
Yeah.
Social media versus going to the park.
Right.
We all know what that looks like. So there is a startup. I wish I remember their name. Which provides company on demand.
Yeah.
And to do errands, and it's a variety of things. There's also handy. It's like you need a handyman.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see, especially with an aging population, new startups offering people who will provide a variety of things, company, service, errands, on demand. Eventually, those startups, the ones that gain traction, will align around new transportation models and apps to provide an array of services that I can't get right now. My mother, she's getting older. I would love for someone to be able to just take her to the store and back. There are some services that provide that. They're not convenient and they're pricey. I would like someone to be able to take her to the airport to fly to Miami and visit me if my brother's not around. Who's that person?
Yeah.
And so you can't get an Uber with a guy who does exactly that.
Yeah.
But I could see alongside autonomous vehicle products, a product is linked to like an option, like send person. And then what will the person have to do? 3 options. Like
Huber.
Carry luggage, keep company.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the other options would be. Like
run
whatever.
Errand or
whatever.
Yeah.
And so that requires people. There are some things people will always be better at.
Like trucking. Like, we keep hearing about autonomous trucks, and maybe if the guy or gal could nap could take their nap while the truck went down the highway, great. But you still need a human to do so many things at both ends of that drive route.
So we all heard the word metaverse. I hate metaverse because we've had it for decades in the form of video games. But I was playing around with it, looking for like a clickbaity title for a column that I've been working on. I was like, should I call it like the Autoniverse? Because if you what is the sausage? How a box gets from A to B? There's a book just came out called Arriving Today by Christopher Mims.
I gotta fucking read that.
It's a great book.
That sounds like my vibe, 100%.
It follows a box of like a thick thing from Vietnam to the United States, from the riverboat, port, ship, crane, truck, all the way to your door. And if you think about,
it would be very meta if it followed itself.
Yeah.
From the tree, the tree being ground up into fucking pulp.
So take if you take a subset of that, which is just the truck in the United States. Well, a thing arrives at the terminal, the crane. It's like to the center, another truck, this local regional distribution center, then a different smaller vehicle to a local distribution center, and then the guy who brings it to your house. So add autonomy to that. Well, you still need people. Mm-hmm. You still do. But if you could move the people from doing the thing they may not be awesome at to doing the thing they are absolutely awesome at, which is the customer service, the handling, the double checking, the redundancy, maybe the empathy, the interaction with the person at the door, that stuff is going to be a long time before you can see a robot do that. And even if they could, would you want a two-leg, like a thing that looks like a Terminator coming up to your door?
Yeah.
No, you want to see a person.
Yeah.
Or I mean, if you may not see a person at all if they're delivering in the middle of the night, which is such an obvious thing. Why aren't deliveries happening at night when there's no traffic? But that's a different show.
It's not a terrible idea, actually.
And so that is my long answer to the question of automation and jobs.
You know what's weird? The weird one that is happening here now are these RC delivery coolers, which I think they want to maybe trick some people into thinking they're autonomous, but they're really radio controlled.
Are they?
Yeah, they're driven by humans.
I've seen some that are autonomous.
It looks like a cooler driving on a fucking sidewalk.
But there's companies doing autonomous ones.
Are there?
Yeah.
The ones that here in LA are operated like drone strikes by humans.
I mean, the issue with remote guidance or mechanical Turks or people in a building like drones work like in the military is the issues of bandwidth and latency. So and the bigger the vehicle, the more people around, the more you want to know about that bandwidth and latency.
Yeah. Very little damage a cooler on wheels can do.
Yeah. But still, it could. If a kid was riding a bike.
Yeah.
And that thing was blocking their path, and that kid was in the street trying to get on the sidewalk, and there's a thing there.
Yeah.
That cooler wheels could be a problem.
Yeah.
Like there are people. That's not. I don't work on those, so I wouldn't pretend to be an expert. I've seen some that are truly autonomous, and I hope that they do that well.
It just seems like an odd thing to have. I guess it's less environmental footprint than a car.
Yeah.
Sure. If you're going a mile or half a mile from the restaurant to your house, like that's cleaner and greener than a car, for sure. That's the shop doorbell. We have people for that.
People
Okay.
are good.
There's humans. We have a human to answer that door here at Westside, like the car storage. I don't even know where I was going with that cooler thing.
Let me
remote driven versus AV, I think was where.
In all this, have you seen this Twitter account, Pessimist Archive?
I've seen it.
Okay,
I don't know if I follow
it. It's run by a guy named Louis Anslow. And he goes back in time and he looks at moral panics around technology. There were people who thought that bicycles would destroy family values. Because women would ride them, and they would be distracted from raising families.
Right.
And
it was connected. It's connected. I listened to the dollop about women's pants.
Yeah.
When women started wearing, and it was like fucking total breakdown of society because women were wearing pants.
Look, what is good for people?
Here's a great one. Things blamed on radio between the 20s and the 40s. Bad economy, poor grades, robbery, dead birds, dirigible explosions, broken windows, fights, rain, snow, drought, gun deaths, bad skin, jailbreaks, unemployment of the blind, blue, green, and pink water.
So
hilarious.
This same conversation has been happening about every technology forever. What is worth preserving? People.
Yeah.
Spending time with other people and learning about people they don't know. This is healthy. And the best technologies are things we choose to use, that we have alternatives always, that bring us closer to the people physically. Things that we are forced to use that separate us from others are not good.
Yeah.
And you can see this in the history of civilization. And people spend time, more people travel,
it's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
So, the
more people sit at home and subject themselves to algorithmic
is bad
information
they think they have a choice, but what is actually happening is they're being fed choices in a narrower band of information, and this is not unique to left or right. It's something we have to always avoid.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, based on your experience, and I know this is not exactly your area of expertise, but you've seen behind the curtain. What, with machine learning, and quote, AI, how much can that machine really learn that it isn't told by someone who's done a study? Can an AV or even a human-driven car with software and hardware drive around or be driven around a city and create a map that it doesn't just create and store, but that it actually learns.
You mean, well, I think what you're referring to is, can it learn context?
Yes.
The meaning of things in context. So
Yes.
first of all, I'm not an AI engineer. I'm going to say something that I wish more people would say. This is not my area of expertise, and I don't think I can add an intelligent insight to that discourse. I will say that I touch and think about the end products. I don't work on what happens further up the sausage, the chain. I'm very optimistic, and in fact, I'm 100% certain that the end products will be good. I can't tell you exactly when they will be everywhere, which is what we want. But, the same question has been asked for everything ever. It's like, when will a plane be able to operate in all conditions and no matter what, even if a pilot makes a mistake? Well, it took a long time to get there, but it got there. And yet still, occasionally pilots make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, that means you want to fly planes in places where a mistake is not a problem. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to fly a plane through an ice storm fully automated,
right?
Unless the plane is rated for ice storms, it has de-icing technology on the wings. And so, all technology requires common sense attached to it. You don't send it out in a place where you don't feel confident and you can't trust it. It's not validated. So that's the best answer I can give you. You should get someone on the show who actually works in artificial intelligence. There's a guy named Gary Marcus who teaches at NYU, who is really fun.
Is that the guy you were telling me about yesterday with the transcript thing?
Yeah. And they were talking about this, the Google engineer who interacted with the chatbot and said,
you see this story, Zach? It's interesting. Give the context of this, because this was so interesting.
Top level, Lemoyne, this guy at Google, his role was to determine whether or not this AI was capable of harm, because there had been some chatbots in the past they thought were good, and then people were asking questions about, should I commit suicide? It's like, well, it sounds like a good idea. and so he was talking to this.
Your wife would be better without you, objectively speaking.
Whatever you feel is best.
If your goal is to escape the pain, this would technically work for that.
And so he said, I guess he told his boss, he's like, this thing is sentient, it's totally alive. Like I can't believe it. And
Skynet is here.
Yeah,
it's here. It's taken over.
Public with that, and I guess he broke his NDA or something, and so he lost his job. He went to the media, and so in the days since,
Google engineer claimed his AI was alive. It was just working as intended.
And so I had this guy Gary Marcus on my podcast Tonicast yesterday, and he's like, "Look, you given enough information, you can basically you can build a good conversationalist, and it can be really good. That doesn't mean it's alive. We don't even know what it means to be alive.
Yeah,
I mean, a term.
Well, the term you used when you told me yesterday was." He said, you imagine one choose your own adventure book, and then you said, imagine 1 million choose your own adventure books stacked into one book.
You'd be really good at talking about adventure.
A virtually infinite choose your own adventure scenario.
Yeah, and also like Mad Libs is another great example. It's like, well, how many Mad Libs books can you read before you're like, I know exactly what someone's going to say next, and that's the AI. So. Look,
how many college men could I meet before I can predict what will be in their fucking New York City apartments with an 80% accuracy?
Well, it turns out that you can.
Turns out the number's 12. You can meet 12 college men and guess what's in their apartment.
But you start. Your first question was, I guess, can an
autonomous vehicle learn context in the way that a human driving that same route or area or region could learn context?
Well, the way Argo does it is we actually go test in a city before we deploy. And so, because if you take a vehicle that's never been somewhere and just send it there, it's not going to be as good as the one.
Oh, it'll send it.
it'll
fucking send it
there are
right
companies
underneath
out there.
a semi-truck crossing
There are companies
the
that
fucking
would
road.
just send it, but the way Argo does it is you learn by going and looking. And so in Miami, there are things in the street you won't find in other cities. Peacocks.
Cubans.
Turkeys.
Iguanas.
Yeah, there's animals you just won't see in other cities. And so you want to go look and see what those are before you put passengers in a vehicle without someone in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And that's how context is learned. Context is learned by looking. You can't invent it out of thin air. I mean, it's just not possible. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could if you cut the car speed in half, and if you see anything you've never seen before, it's just like, well,
we're stopping.
Yeah, doesn't look. I mean, yeah, that's about as much as I can say about that.
No,
I mean, I could say more. But
No,
it's
I
not
mean,
for
but
me
it's
to say, so.
because there are people out there that regularly claim. And not just people who work for Tesla, but people on the internet that fancy themselves very smart, that claim that these cars are out there mapping the world on behalf of the greater good. And both Moody, who is great, Mahmoud Hikmet.
I love him.
On Twitter. He did a great video for YouTube, which I talk about all the time, called Are FSD Drivers Testing?
I saw that's a great
It's a
video.
fucking great video. Really, and if you take that video compared with Argo's here's how we hire safety drivers statement, you go, oh no, these people are not testing at all. They feel like they've bought a product, they're using it, and they're social influencing.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people, in good faith, believe that these cars are mapping the world for the mothership and sending back all the data.
The Tesla vehicles.
Yeah, the Tesla vehicles, which anyone who knows the very basic thing about internet and the size of video files know this is literally impossible. It's absolutely not possible for a Tesla or any other car to live stream video data from multiple camera angles to some mothership and then have the mothership have any idea what to fucking do with it.
Well, the way I got started, I went from being the guy who liked to drive fast to working at a Navy company. I was at South by Southwest. It was 2015. I was sharing an Uber with Riley Brennan, who's probably one of the best.
On the show before, he'll come on the show again.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
He's amazing human. And I didn't know him well, but I was aware that he was teaching at Stanford. He was doing something in technology. And in 2015, I mean, this was 7 years ago, I said, Riley, I have this theory that a mile of data gathered by a Tesla might not be as packed full of useful information as a mile of data gathered by these people at Google.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, he's like, you might be onto something. and time and events have shown that was exactly true. And there's a company, I don't know if it's ESI, for many years, they've been doing really deep testing on ADAS and AV tech. And the guy in 2017, I think, put his Tesla in a room, a Faraday cage room, and just read everything coming off the car and did this over time. And he's like,
interesting experiment.
Yeah. And this is many years ago, said exactly what you just said. He's like, there's not a lot of data coming off this car.
Yeah.
And I'm driving around all the time.
Well, look, this is now, they've now wandered into being Zach's area of expertise. We go out and make videos. We have two cameras on the car, one filming inside and one filming forward. And over a period of 15 to 18 minutes for this drive, those cameras record 10 gigabytes each of data. And we go 6 miles. So you're telling me that a car that's driving around all the time is going to be over fucking cellular network dumping 50, 100 gigabytes of video data a day forever? And all the cars? There's just no fucking way.
Look, anyone who works in AV will tell you, you can make a thing move around by camera alone, but if you want it to move better or safer,
Yeah.
you want as much information as possible. And that means it's not just video; it's other sensors too.
Yeah.
Radar, lidar, whatever, and more data. More data is only better if it's useful. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's if you go into a taxi with a driver who's lived in a city.
Yeah.
He's going to get you around.
The knowledge, baby.
The knowledge.
The knowledge is fucking
versus
key.
a cab driver who's never been to that place, but he's driving a cab a long time.
Oh, dude. That's one of the things with Uber and Lyft is you'll get that where someone will, they'll just, I'm just following what the screen says with no real kind of awareness of,
context,
of where they are.
Context.
Of context.
And that context is irrelevant to safety too, because a driver or an autonomous vehicle that has lived its life or lived its deployment in one place is going to know a lot more about that place over time. And that's why when we go on vacation and we rent a car in a place we've never been in, a country we don't know much about, we're not rolling out the way we would roll out back home.
Yeah.
So,
And I experience that regularly.
Yeah.
I do, even in countries that have very similar laws to us. It's an interesting experience.
When I went to India with Niedermeyer years ago, I wasn't.
You
rolling
called me
out.
from India, and you were like, "Dude, you have to see this."
Did you go finally?
No, I have never been. I'd like to go. I would. There's a lot of places that are on my.
It's the only country where the safety spike is standard on the wheel.
It's actually a steer horn.
Yeah.
We just. I don't know if I saw you since, but I finally read "Unsafe at Any Speed," which is a must.
Yeah.
The kind of shit that was going down in the 60s in service of car design.
The fins. The fins.
When Ralph Nader describes a young man who has been thrown a football across the backyard becoming impaled on the fin of a parked 1959 Eldorado.
I know, it's a heart stopping to think about it. The kids riding on the street in these cars.
And the second collision. That's when the car hits the other car and then your face hits the fucking dashboard or the domed center section of the steering wheel.
Did you see, what's the movie, Death Proof?
Oh, yeah.
And there's the scene, what's his name? Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the few times you saw in a major movie
consequences of 60s car design.
I actually think that if you grow up in other countries, especially like Western Europe, the news is more graphic about war, about crashes, about stuff. And they got tits in commercials. Oh, and the billboards in the street.
Yeah. It's basically more real.
Yeah, it is more. Our interaction, like human to human, is really important, both in a good and healthy and happy way. The more people we meet from more places, the better we are as a society. But the corollary to that is that our distance from the consequences of bad decisions means that we don't have context to those decisions.
Sure.
And that driving, going to war, whatever it is, drinking, smoking,
drone strikes.
Yeah, whatever it is. And so I think as a society, it's really important that we understand that at a young age.
Yeah.
Because we learn respect for others. Respect requires a mirror.
Sure.
And without that mirror early on, individualism can become really unhealthy.
America's mirror is not good. We have a bad mirror. We got a funhouse ass mirror over here.
I have gone through phases of my life where I oscillated with views on both sides around a lot of different topics. But I persist to be I remain optimistic. In fact, I'm more optimistic today. Because I find that on my most depressed days about any topic, the news comes out, these people are bad, it's all doom and gloom. I'm like, but actually, we've been through, Pessimist Archive is a great example of this. Look at the debates between presidential candidates in the 18th or 17th centuries. Oh, yeah. They were ready.
It was crazy.
They were ready to kill. then.
Sometimes they did. They'd fucking shoot each other.
Yeah.
It was.
And so, women used to have the right to vote. Crazy.
Yeah, it's not a straight line, but we've definitely. Some things are better, and other things it's just
you
a circle.
You want to make sure that the arc doesn't bend down.
Sure.
It might not bend at a rate as much as we like. As long as it doesn't bend down, the next generation has a shot.
Yeah.
And look, the market crashed last week. I remember in 1987, my dad coming home from work with a grim face.
This was the last loaf of bread.
And but then he had also lived through every time there was an oil shock or a terrorist attack in 1983, the bombing of the U.S. Marines barracks in Lebanon, and that killed the travel industry. We were in the family business was travel, and he'd been through this multiple times. The war, 1973. And 1967, and so he had been through multiple crises, but the bar for him was World War II.
Yeah.
Because his family died in the camps. He joined the U.S. Army. His brother was killed in the Canadian Air Force, and so if that was the bar, and relative to that, he's like, look,
we're not getting
everything is
Zyklon
survivable. Nothing. Teamwork is required, and the team isn't just the family; it's all the other families, everybody who works for us, and people that we might need, in the future.
Yeah.
So, my optimism is greater as I get older, and I look at my daughter; she's 3.5. She doesn't know about the stock market crash.
Yeah.
As long as I can protect her long enough to stand on her own as a empathetic and smart individual, I think it's gonna be fine.
Interesting. I think we have to, at least in America, have to start thinking a little more collectively.
Yes.
And really figure out what our real priorities are in terms of having a livable fucking world.
Look,
there was 6 natural disasters at once yesterday.
Lake Mead.
Yeah,
Lake Mead.
There was a fucking crazy nor'easter rainstorm one place that was fucking shit up. Did you see what happened in Yellowstone?
Yeah.
Is that the East Road? It's
yeah,
the
my
East Road.
aunt lives there, and she's like, we have neighbors that our houses are flooded. A lot of the main roads in the town got flooded
Completely
or knocked out.
Right?
Yeah, they've never seen rain like this in 100 years or something.
There's a crazy fucking fire, wildfire somewhere. There was snow in Mexico. Yes, yesterday
In Mexico City.
Yeah,
I saw
snow.
Yeah.
In Mexico in June. The fuck out of here.
Look, those are things that individuals cannot solve.
Yeah.
That's where collective work, government is necessary. Look
at that shit. A strange hailstone. Look at that. Look how much snow that is. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Zach, anything on the Patreon? Do we have questions?
We had three questions.
The Patreon is where you would go to ask questions of our guests.
I forgot we were live. I haven't said anything crazy, so it's fine.
No, it's fine.
So the top 4 were specifically for Alex, and then there's some kind of car
we
stuff.
can start with those. And if we've hit some of these on our own, I'm sorry. David Crawford says, where will automated driving first succeed widely? Slow valet parking or fast freeway driving? Well, right now it's the most successful in well-marked, divided, single lane. Right? There's some systems where you can safely take your hands off the wheel some of the time in those situations.
Well, if referring to driver assistance like Blue Cruise and Super Cruise, yeah. Again, people always want to know what's going to happen first, and yet there's dozens of companies working on everything at the same time, and there's some progress in almost every area. Mm-hmm. I'm not expert in all areas.
Is it like the environment that has the fewest variables would likely succeed first? So like highways with Super Cruise and whatnot, most of the time everyone's going the same direction. There's no kids running out into the highway with, bicycles and balls. Whereas like valet, usually restaurants are a busy area. There's bicycles, there's people, there's,
parking
that seems more complicated.
much harder to solve
it's
than
funny how that is,
driving.
Because I haven't seen a lot of good parking systems from anybody.
They're all shitty.
But in a perfect world, all other things being equal, a simpler environment is easier to deploy. Also, less demand, and therefore not where you're going to see the most resources deployed in the beginning. Someone's got to make enough money to make payroll to develop anything.
Yeah.
Where there's no business and there's no technology.
Yeah.
And then you got to hire more people and more people. So all this technology requires a lot of people, which is why you're often going to see it deployed or developed first for places where there's demand. Whether that seems like a good idea, whether that it defines some people's definition, whether that matches some people's expectation or not, is not relevant, because if you can't make payroll for all people required to deploy it, it's not coming.
I mean, I'm most likely to accept the autonomous systems when it's self-driving in traffic, sub 20 miles an hour. Here's a traffic jam where the risk is low. I'm stuck here, and now I want to check my phone, as opposed to going 90 miles an hour down the freeway.
Higher speeds will come later.
Yeah,
higher speeds will come later for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's like every technology. It's like, how fast you want that elevator to go up?
Yeah,
and how far do you want it to go?
Fast as fuck. And all the way, baby.
You could have made elevators really fast, but until Elijah Otis showed up with a safety catch,
you
didn't want to.
Have you been in my elevator here yet?
Oh, here?
Yeah.
No. Who built it?
It's Kone.
Oh, really?
It's awesome.
Yeah, the guys from Finland.
It's so fucking dope. I love my elevator.
It's a very high quality elevator.
Dude, it's so smooth. You can't even feel it move.
I'm really proud of you for getting a non-obvious brand, but one of the best.
They gave me some options.
Yeah.
And I had to get an elevator for ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, as required. I did not have to get such a nice one. I could have gotten a pretty basic. The Otis was the basic.
And so
the Kone is the upgrade.
The best Otis was not as good as the base Kone?
My choices for this particular application, which were based on size requirements and blah, 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 the Kone was the best one. And I also think it's not special, but it's not like a shaft that's dug deep into the thing. It's like it's electric, not hydraulic, something like that. Something about it, where the elevator control room is located had some unique requirements and blah, but it's fucking smooth.
You know, it's so
smooth.
Most people, if you ask them to name an elevator company, they're going to say Otis. Yeah. And they're going to say, well, any others? No, Otis owns it. You know, they own it all, but they only own like 11% of the market. And Kone, I think, is 9% globally. The other thing that's fun about Otis and Kone, and I think Hitachi and Schindler, I forget the fifth big one.
Ingersoll maybe or something?
I don't know. It could be. Yeah. You know, in 1863 or 2, when Elijah Otis had the safety catch system and he demonstrated or claimed to demonstrate it in front of a big crowd of people in New York City, that he wasn't the guy who was famous at the time for elevators. There was another guy also named Otis, but Otis was his first name. Oh. His name was Otis Tufts. And Otis Tufts' elevator was considered the good one. And Elijah was like, whatever. And he wasn't even in the paper. So Otis Tufts' elevator was considered the safest in the world because it used a hydraulic screw drive. So it was a massive screw.
Oh my God.
In
That's
the
how
center
it would go
of
up
the
and
elevator,
down?
and the elevator would move up and down along the screw.
Oh my God.
So if
how interesting.
Yeah, so if any system failure, the elevator would just stop.
It would just stop, yeah.
And it would never. And so that was considered the safest.
A screwdriver.
The problem was
my new garage door opener is on a screwdriver.
It's very reliable. The problem with the screwdriver elevator is that if you could build a building more than 5 stories tall, it would take forever to get that elevator to the top.
Yeah, it's got to be slow as shit.
It was not. It didn't scale.
Yeah.
And so for scaling, you needed electricity. And you needed some other safety mechanism.
Yeah.
And so Elijah Otis wasn't even the guy who built a good business around this. He died a couple of years later, having not nailed any of this together into a good company. His sons formed a new company, and in the 1890s rolled up like 20 other companies and assembled all the components of a great elevator product and then the business. There's so many obvious things to us today we take for granted that back then were not obvious. So you arrive at the floor. You want the elevator to go fast in between the floors, but just before it gets to the floor, to slow down and match floor to floor.
Yeah.
And whether it's done by a human, which required artistry, or by a machine, it requires precision. That's what you want. Otherwise, when it gets there, you're all jumping. Or at the bottom, you're falling
fucking
down.
breaking your knees.
So that's a system. That's a subsystem. Another one is, if you only have one set of doors, you want to make sure those doors do not open at any point other than the elevator is stopped and at the floor.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you do something like, well, maybe we should have 2 sets of doors. One of them is on the floor side, and one's in the elevator, and they have to meet.
They have to sync each other,
Or else people are going to be badly injured. and so the elevator is at another floor. You want to make sure the floor doors
match up with
not only that they under no circumstances can they ever open
without an elevator there.
But there has to be a mechanism for a service guy to open them, and that mechanism needs its own safety system to be redundant. And so you have to think about all the sub pieces that have to work in harmony every time. And that's why elevators are so safe, because that's the stuff's been around a long time and baked.
Even though it's very safe, and even though it's a settled science, and even though I have, all things considered, a very basic elevator, it is a nice elevator, but it's a basic elevator. I have a very expensive service and maintenance contract for that elevator.
And you know what? And behind that are people.
Yeah.
And that's why all the technology in the world, doesn't matter what it is, autonomous vehicles, whatever, there's always going to be people.
Yeah.
And they're going to be moved from making time-critical safety decisions, which is often where you don't want people to make them, into service, support, creation, and sales of systems that do those things better than we could.
Yeah.
And that's the future.
Yeah.
That's always been the future.
Zach, what else we got up there? Chad says, I recently saw a guy sleeping behind the wheel of a Tesla Model 3 while driving down the interstate at 90 miles an hour. Dude's head was bobbing on his chest as he passed me. How should state and local law enforcement handle this sort of thing? Any thoughts?
From this story is one you hear from time to time, and the interval in my Tesla for in between alerts here, it's a highway speeds. I think the interval when you get the first alert, like you put your hand on the wheel or do something, is about 16 seconds.
Okay.
And then the second one is soon after that, and then the system disengages, and not good. So this, I don't know what happened here, but either if the person fell asleep or had a medical emergency, chances are that car he was going 90. So 90 is the limit of autopilot. So chances are that guy is faking it to make a video. But if he is actually asleep, he fell asleep inside in less than 30 seconds, stayed asleep, and that car's something bad's going to happen soon. So that's reckless driving.
I mean, I've seen the videos.
Yeah.
I think I would assume 50% of them are fake.
Yeah, I think it's more like 75 or 80%.
You think so?
Yeah, yeah, because you can't actually, the car just won't keep going. It won't.
What will happen? Will it pull over and stop?
No.
It'll just disengage and then crash into something?
So I believe, and I haven't tried this in a while, that it will eventually stop in lane if there's nothing in front of it. I think.
Sketchy.
I mean, the alerts get louder.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't want to test this because I don't really care anymore. It's outside of my wheelhouse now. But I don't believe there's any technology that will bring a Tesla to a safe stop. What you're describing, what you want.
One of the cars, and I want to say it's GM.
I don't know.
No, it's Mercedes' new level 3 thing. Will actually pull the car over if you ignore the warnings.
Look, what you're describing is called an MRC, a minimal risk condition. And this has not been, from what I can tell, baked in to driver assistance systems since the beginning, because they've been around for years, and we haven't, except for the Mercedes one, I haven't heard of anyone else doing this, taking it seriously. Whereas the autonomous vehicle companies, Argo and Waymo, and I imagine others, the notion of an MRC, minimal risk condition, is absolutely baked into from the beginning. So you get into a Waymo, you get into an Argo vehicle, and there's a pullover button. It's in different places, in different cars or in the app, but you press it, and the vehicle, which has a map of an HD map, will pull over at the next safe location out of the way of traffic such that you can exit the vehicle safely. And you don't want to hand over, I wouldn't trust the system unless I knew that was a basic piece of functionality from day one. And every time I get in, anyone else's vehicle, and I've used this in Argo, it's like, I press it.
Yeah.
I want to know what it's going to do. And, and sometimes it pulls over right away because there's an open spot. Sometimes it makes the next right turn on a side street and it stops right there. And I would be reluctant to fully trust a car that was just driver assistance.
Yeah.
Unless
there's people who will see videos like the people sleeping in a Tesla video, most of which might be fake.
That's reckless driving.
Yeah, and they say, well, if this was in any other car, the person would fall asleep and it would just crash. This car is in the act of saving this person's life. I think that's dumb as rocks.
That is
look, we could speculate as to what would happen in each of those videos. We don't know.
Yeah.
But if in saving their life they are adding risk to others, I'm not sure. I don't know what the math. I don't know what the morality or math looks like on that. If they were alone on the road, and I don't know.
I mean, that's a chicken and egg question because it assumes that this person fell asleep not by choice, and that this car is then saving them. Which would and what they're saying is, everyone who has cruise control is so close to falling asleep. Thankfully, this person had this Tesla or whatever this car. So
Look, I haven't heard any philosophers come out and take that point of view. I have heard people who are financially incentivized to take that point of view. And the people I find most interesting are people with whom I disagree completely, and yet they will come out with a point of view which is not dogmatic. Dogmatic people, new information doesn't move them.
Right.
And so it's always good to check oneself. And I hear a lot of people who are not checking themselves when they say things like that.
Chad, to answer Chad's question, I mean, I think that is a reckless driving type situation there. Christopher says, how close is Argo to the level of autonomy that was talked about with Missy, cars fully driving themselves with no human input required?
Argo builds level 4 technology. It's what they do.
So there are cars you could get in right now that have no driver and under most circumstances will drive themselves without human input, right? They fuck up once in a while.
Well, to be clear, I mean, the deployment that Argo has with Lyft today, there are still safety... we call it test specialists in front. And there's a difference between like a safety operator who's just the moral crumple zone and someone who's a trained engineer whose job it is to monitor the system and take notes. These are different roles, and they overlap, but they're not the same. And so actually, speaking of jobs, there is a period of time during which, when you first introduce such a service to a city, you want to have people in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Even if the vehicle is capable of operating without anybody in the vehicle, just to talk to the passengers, because you don't want the passengers climbing over the seats and pulling the wheel and answering questions.
Yeah.
Waymo went through this. Waymo had a 10-year lead and everybody else in getting to market, and they had a transitional period. Every company's going to have this. I've been in Argo's driverless vehicles in recent weeks. I mean, meaning nobody up front, but the vehicles on South Beach that you can order today using the Lyft app, there are still Argo people in the front who will talk to you. And every company's going to go through this cycle. It's a natural cycle, in the same way that elevators. It was a natural cycle.
But that human input is there to make you feel better at this point, and not necessarily to take over control from the vehicle.
Correct.
Even though once in a while that does happen.
I have been on many rides where there was nothing. They had nothing to do other than talk to me, and then eventually they'll get pulled out. So
it is possible,
Yeah,
but
possible.
Not necessarily in a privately purchasable.
Privately owned
vehicle is different. Yeah.
So I wrote something. How are we doing on time?
I'm fucking here for you, bro.
I wrote a column recently about Risk, the board game? Did you
Yeah,
read
it was
that
good.
one?
I did read it. It was good. And I struggled a little bit because I didn't play a lot of Risk, but I did understand the basic concept of the game.
So I bring it up because it comes back to what you just raised. So for anybody who hasn't played Risk, if you played Risk, this will be really easy. I said the AV sector is like a game of Risk. If you want to understand what's going on, ignore the headlines and look at a Risk game board and imagine that Risk being played in 3 dimensions. And so you have last mile, robo-taxi, stack the boards. Last mile, robo-taxi, middle mile, trucking. And I omitted a board for personally owned AVs. I didn't include that because it's, I think, literally a different business. But the thing that people, if you just accept that autonomous technology is going to work, validated, trustworthy, and safe in some places before others, then it's very easy to add personal ownership to the conceptual mix of vehicles and start putting timelines on it. If you want a personal owned vehicle that works everywhere, that's going to be the furthest away.
Yeah.
If you want a personally owned vehicle that is capable of autonomy in some places, that's going to be much sooner. And that's when people ask that question, you have to ask them back, well, what do you expect it to do?
Yeah.
Because at some point in the future, when the hardware costs come down, and they're coming down all the time, it costs much less today to put a vehicle on the street than it did 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 years ago. And so as those costs come down, you'll start seeing vehicles that have multiple sensors that are affordable, capable of autonomy in some places, not others. So you'll have a dual mode vehicle. And there are still businesses that don't exist yet around that. And an example of that would be, once cities have had for many years robotaxi fleets and some autonomous delivery, people will be like, well, of course, like that just makes perfect sense. And then eventually, in the service of making cities more livable, there will be some equilibrium of, we should make this neighborhood where a lot of cyclists, have been struck by human-driven vehicles. We'll make this neighborhood a neighborhood where autonomy is required during rush hour. Eventually, I don't know. I can't pick a year because it'll be different in different countries. And
there's places in Europe that are not with autonomy, but where they ban cars during certain hours and stuff. And in general, very pleasant.
Yeah, very pleasant.
It's very nice.
You'll see this, and depending on where you are in the United States, you may see this someplace sooner than others. And eventually, you could see at a later date, after all of the, I don't want to say easier, but all of the different autonomy business models are baked and operating harmoniously in a city, you'll see vehicles enter the market that are privately owned. They'll be dual mode. So you want to drive it, country roads, go ahead. You want to drive in the highway, you can, but you can also activate a highway autonomy functionality. And if you want to drive in the city, if that city is, say, autonomy mandatory during rush hour, and your car is capable of operating there, the vehicles will need some kind of system that will when it passes the boundary, automatically it'll let you know, hey, approaching the boundary in 60 seconds, it's gonna kick into autonomy mode. Pick your destination.
Yeah,
and then you pass the boundary, and it seamlessly enters autonomy mode, and then it's in the city, operating harmoniously among a mixed fleet of other companies, also who have autonomous technologies in the other vehicles.
Yeah.
And then, now we're getting into science fiction.
Yeah.
But one can imagine, and this is why I'm so optimistic in general about technology, but especially, this is where I get a little patriotic. The Americans, the United States exists because people wanted to escape old ways of thinking and like systems that didn't allow them to express themselves or try things. And so we're going to see, I think here before anywhere else, software companies working on concepts of like traffic markets.
Yeah.
And because if you have multiple companies with autonomous technologies operating in the same area, then there will be some kind of load balancing necessary, the way like network packets move, and there'll be some kind of market associated with that. So people like, I've got to get here. An ambulance has to get through. Ambulance
So
doesn't have to pay extra for that.
Part the water.
Part the waters.
Yeah.
But if I'm willing to pay, I don't know. I have to get here to a wedding, so I'm the best man. I'm the groom, and I'm willing to pay $100 to save 5 minutes. Maybe I bid. I bid per minute.
Oh, now we're getting American here.
Now we're getting American.
Now we're getting very American.
But let me flip
my time is worth more than your time.
But let's flip the script, because there's nothing more democratic than traffic. It sucks.
Yeah.
Everyone suffers together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can also get on a train and skip it. In New York City, you'd be crazy to drive.
Sure.
Crazy or want to separate yourself from others, which is a different pathology. But there's mechanisms one could implement to actually benefit the city. If the city is part of as a beneficiary of the traffic market. So you say universal, you say UBI. Okay, like there are merits to UBI, but you could also, maybe there's a universal, there's like a universal fund that is paid into by the traffic market. No, because if there are people willing to pay extra to save time, let them.
Yeah.
But
where does that money go?
Part of that goes to the city to maintain infrastructure, the trains,
system,
whatever.
Yeah.
Because for every system, there are better ways to implement a new choice. So that is an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And because obviously, and this is where the American system is so interesting, is you have wild oscillations in the popularity of an idea based on something bad that happened because of that idea.
Yeah.
And so it would be automatic pushback against the notion of a purely an unregulated traffic market. And after the crash in 1929, we saw a universe of regulations come in, which were good.
Yeah.
And something like that is likely to occur here too, and it should. And
That's
it should.
interesting.
And I, by the way, I'm no genius. I just think about these things, look at the past, and say, well,
Yeah.
what if? If I had one good idea that might work, there's 100 others out there, and that should be tried.
What is, to bring it back to today, how does a autonomous experimental vehicle like Argo has in Miami or Waymo is using communicate back to a human-driven vehicle? Because Missy and I talked about nonverbal communication between drivers and stuff like this. Is there any method or anything that an autonomous rideshare vehicle uses to communicate to human-driven cars around them, whether
different
it's lights
companies,
or whatever?
I mean, many companies have talked about this, and I've seen different systems. The most basic thing, most people, sad to say, don't actually pay much attention to other drivers. They pay attention to other cars, but if you look around, I'll say this: the Argo vehicles currently can show intent. Because you can nudge a vehicle,
by nudging?
you can nudge, and basically you can. There are many ways.
They use blinkers, I imagine.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm disappointed when I see videos of any vehicle not using a blinker correctly.
Sure.
That seems like a pretty obvious thing, like being able to execute a minimal risk condition pullover. Those are really basic things, and companies that can't do that need to solve that, or they shouldn't be on the road.
Yeah.
There are ways to demonstrate intent merely through the vehicle itself.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen really good. I haven't seen really good like audio visual systems for that yet. I imagine they could be designed, but there would have to be some commonality.
Sure.
Because the way people turn their head or raise their hand is fairly common. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't want to have every AV company deploying a different audio-visual method.
You need to go to the Johnny Cab method, where you just have a fucking fake guy who makes facial expressions.
These are, depending on the environment, this may become more critical. I don't want to say critical, important over time. I ride our vehicles all the time.
I feel like it'll become less important over time as more vehicles become connected to each other.
If the volume of vehicles on the road that are autonomous in a given city is high enough, then it would be less critical. But if there's a person on the road who is, I want to say low empathy, but if someone who's, there are people out there who don't care about other people's hand gesture.
Sure. Yeah.
In which case, no amount of
especially in this city, driving G-Wagons.
no amount of intent is going to stop them from going first.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I will always err on the side of caution, and I'll show intent, but if they don't want to respect that intent, let them go.
Yeah.
That's me. So, you know, I'm confident that the current generation of vehicles, or at least the ones that I have been in the places in which I've been them, are cool rolling out. But that's very different from saying that this is a solved problem everywhere.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, really, I think there's a level of empathy baked, and it's just hard to believe I'm saying this, like empathy baked into the vehicles that I've ridden in and enjoyed from like Argo and Waymo, that I'm like, okay, this makes me feel like I wish humans drove like this. And generally, when two humans of empathy meet at an intersection in cars, it goes really well.
Yeah.
And so we have, if you step back and think of the broader system, like what as a society do we do, or have we done for a century, about drivers who are low empathy? We haven't done a lot.
Not much, other than, you know, the basic ticketing system and if they break the law.
So, I mean, I guess the question would then become is, if we made every new driver indicate intent with a common method of hand gestures, flashers, honk, whatever, or, you know, what do you got, sign language, how many people would respect that?
Yeah.
And then what would the equilibrium of safety in any given city rise to? Because beyond that, it doesn't matter as long as there are low empathy people driving cars.
Yeah.
And we have not done much in this country to address that long before AVs were even on the road.
Yeah. Man, interesting to think about. What else we got on this list? Anything for Alex? What else do we have? Do you want to talk about architecture, Alex?
I don't know. Sure. The Morgan three-wheeler. Yes, I still have it. And
where is it?
It's actually
sitting
in Thousand Oaks at George Myers, spot 44. I was thinking of selling it, but it's a great reality check on safety and intent. Because when you show up in that thing, they think you're an idiot or you're a masochist and you don't care about your own safety.
Yeah.
And your skill levels need to be high.
Yeah.
You know,
but also the enjoyment level is quite high.
Is very high. However, now we're going to talk about something you brought up earlier about safe cities, pedestrians, like just quality of life in cities.
Sure.
And your friend Moxon.
Oh, yeah.
The philosopher Moxon.
Yeah, I read A.R. Moxon every day.
So I recommend reading him, and thanks to you.
Julius Goat on Twitter.
Yeah, I thank you for that. So he's fascinating for many reasons. One more is that even if you disagree with most or everything he says, he is an absolutely fascinating character who forces you to think about what your countervailing position is.
Totally.
And I agree with a lot of what he says.
Did you read the Streets thing I sent you?
That's the first thing I read.
It's a fucking epic piece of writing.
So that's the one I want to talk about, because there was a study came out. There was a few studies, but last week there was a study that came out that said that noise levels, traffic noise, are associated with lower levels of learning and cognition in children, and higher levels of dementia later in life. And we know that proximity to a highway, in terms of both toxic substances, coming off of tires, we know that has negative health consequences, and real estate values reflect that.
Yeah.
Add noise to that, and suddenly I was like, my God, how much damage have I done to my hearing riding that Morgan around without hearing protection?
Yeah.
So I love that thing, and it's fantastic, but I wouldn't drive it again without
earplugs.
Not just earplugs, but like active noise canceling, and the whole thing.
It's loud.
It's loud, and I put the aftermarket exhaust on it back in the day when I was just full on. And so I think I'm going to keep it.
You should keep it.
I just haven't driven it in probably 2 years.
I should drive it.
Would you like me to leave it with you?
I should. Yeah. Yes, I would.
I would absolutely leave it with you. I would love to.
I would drive that thing around a little bit. It's fun as fuck.
Yeah, it's great. You know, it's Morgan just released a new model.
Yeah, the Super 3-wheeler.
Yeah, which has like a 3-cylinder motor.
It has a car engine.
Yeah.
Which I think is worse.
Yeah,
I don't want that.
I'm not sure about that, and it's also concealed. Part of the fun of the Morgan is that you got this enormous.
Well, because your Morgan has an air-cooled engine. Yeah. The new one has a water-cooled engine, so it now has a radiator in the front with a shroud of sorts.
I mean, it looks like everything about it's better, except I wish the motor was air-cooled and out front.
Yeah. So you want yours, the Super 3. It's called.
I was sad they were going to make an electric one, which had only one headlight. You see, it was off center.
Yeah,
and I was like, "That's the one.
That's the Wally one.
Yeah,
I want that shit.
It's totally cool."
I'd like to try that one. I wanted an electric Vespa, but it was the slow. It wasn't fast, and so that bummed me out. We had a couple other ones that were interesting there. Andrew says, yeah, Ford is issuing a recall for 49,000 Mustang Mach-E's. Am I affected? I mean, that's all of them.
Yeah.
That's every car they've built. So, yes, I am affected. It is not going to stop me from driving the car. I'm going to drive it until I bring it back in for whatever the fuck they do. I don't know. That's why you lease these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have plenty of other cars to drive.
I'm looking at this question from Pete Peterson.
Peter Peterson says, what do you think of Doug DeMuro's hypothesis about cars that will rise in value? He says that cars that have risen in value are enthusiast cars, which are not desirable when new and create their own scarcity due to low sales numbers. Was there more underneath that, or was that it? No.
So you and I had this conversation like 7 or 10 years ago when we were talking about car show ideas, and before Radwood existed. That in the 80s, 90s cars would go up in value. I think that, if I'm right, that cities, in years to come, will have autonomy mandatory times of day and zones.
Right.
So if that's true, some people will be annoyed, but those aren't the people who are driving their vintage cars into the city. Nobody wants to drive a vintage car into the city at rush hour except me, because I'm an idiot. So
there's a few people in LA who do that, but they're really committed.
Yeah. So I think what's going to happen is vehicles that predate connectivity and hard ADAS. Like, it's hard. The average person is just not going to do the work of figuring out how to turn off their ADAS. And I think in the future that vehicles, and I think that ship has already sailed. Like, vehicles that are really not connected and don't have ADAS, we're never going to see those again, except from
an ultra low volume.
Yeah, a low volume.
Yeah, and I was talking to the Dallara guy last weekend. We might get a couple of them around.
So if the average vehicle ownership time span is a lifespan is, I think, 10, 11 years, is that
Something
right?
like that, yeah.
So in decades to come, every vehicle that's still in half decent condition before 06 is, I think, absolutely going to become a collectible.
Yeah, I mean, Doug isn't. I think Doug's hypothesis is part of it. I mean, they're certainly enthusiast cars. They're certainly, as our everyday cars become more powerful but less engaging, and the mainstream cars, we look for something that is a little more engaging, but the modern driver still wants them to be usable. So the very end of the manual transmission cars, where where it's not going to overheat in traffic, and it'll have air conditioning, and it'll have an iPhone connection of some kind, but still be a stick shift and whatnot. Those cars are collectible. And there's also cars that didn't sell well when new because they were very niche products, like a CTSV wagon. Oh, yeah. CTSV wagon.
Dodge Magnum?
Dodge Magnums. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that where, I mean, will we be kicking ourselves, the end of this question, will we all be kicking ourselves for not buying a new Supra today? No.
Well,
because,
have you seen, you have eyes.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that car will be ugly forever. But something, cultural had to happen, the Fast and the Furious, for us to appreciate the old Supra the way that we did. But you can, if what you're looking for is a financial investment, then buying a car that's not so great today, only to maybe make money on it later, isn't the smartest idea.
No. I love when you tweet about the guy who's like selling his like 1997 Camaro.
Oh, what it cost him per mile to drive it?
Yeah.
The worst is if you sell like a 2016 Z06 today. That you bought new and put like 1,000 miles on, it costs you like $9 a mile to drive that Corvette. Like late model, like they take beatings.
Do you have a Countach meter?
Countach, I'm net positive. They paid me per mile, baby. Last night at dinner, or 2 nights ago, we were talking about fucking how dumb NFTs were and crypto and shit. And I was like, I want to have a T-shirt that just says Lambos and land.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've been buying. It's worked out okay.
Did you see? Oh, well, we haven't talked about crypto at all, thank God. But I lost
There's
no
always
money.
another show.
I lost no money on that. Just
Good
so
for
you know.
you.
None.
Good for you.
Yeah. I remember saying to Brian a few years ago, I'm like, what do you think of this? He's like, I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm not sure. Did you see the Apple CarPlay announcement of the full dashboard?
Oh, there's a lot going on.
And
it's so much screen.
I was discussing it with Riley Brandon a few years ago. We were like, what do you think the Apple Car is? And I wasn't right, but I'm like, I think it's just an OS.
Yeah.
Because everyone hates their infotainment, and Apple knows infotainment. So what if they just did the infotainment and a little more?
Yeah.
And then someone sent me after the Apple CarPlay announcement, what about Saab night panel? Like,
yes.
Why? I'm asking you, because I don't have the answer. Why doesn't every car today have a night panel button?
They should. And I've seen something similar. I'm blanking on what car it was. But one of the cars that had a mostly touchscreen dash had a minimal screen night mode that just showed, the speedometer and the fuel gauge. And all the other screens got dim. It almost was the same thing. Night mode, if you have no idea, if you've never been in a Saab, you would press a button. It was a hard button, and it would turn off every light in the cabin except the speedometer, which it would dim. And it was like fighter pilot shit. Yeah. And your eyes wouldn't get tired. It was great. You could drive for hours and hours at night, and your eyes just wouldn't get tired because you didn't have the screens blaring at them. It was fucking cool. It was a shame that other people didn't. Do you think they had a patent?
It's got to be expired by now.
I mean, it must have, but the Apple CarPlay dash, I like where their head is at, but it showed me. Look at this. It was too much screen and too much information. Like, I don't need to know the weather while I'm driving. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just seemed like a lot.
I'll give you an example when you might want to know the weather, but it's not relevant for a long time. In the future, once HD maps are ubiquitous,
A radar overlay of the weather on the HD map.
I mean, I can't put a year on this because I haven't seen enough companies or startups think this way. We talked about Boeing versus Airbus and driver assistance versus driver augmentation. So in the future, but hopefully, human-driven vehicles will have driver assistance will be replaced by driver augmentation. So it's some kind of system where the power and what you can do is unlocked by your skill, like Forza driver training.
Yeah.
And such a system to function so basically, if there's people and kids around and the road is wet and there's leaves, no matter what you do, it won't let you steer into a kid, and it won't let you run into a wall. So there's an envelope of what the car will let you do that expands and contracts based on conditions. For that to work, and if you bump up against the boundary, we bump up against these boundaries today, but the car never teaches us how to become better drivers. Because if you traction control and AEB and these systems, they kick in, but there's not like a thing on the screen that says, here's why that kicked in. Here's how that won't kick in again. Here's why, when, and where you can drive as fast as you want. And be more careful. And good luck. You just unlocked. You went to the you just got to the next level. You know, and your insurance just went down because you just drove really well.
Yeah.
That system doesn't exist outside of Forza and GT. So, but for such a system to function, make us better drivers, and really enjoy sports cars of the future, you would need real-time, highly accurate weather information associated with a map. And you're driving really fast on a country road, and further up, unbeknownst to any driver with the best eyes in the world, there's a wet patch.
Yeah.
And there's leaves, and we wouldn't know it. And crashes like that happen all the time. And so I'm not necessarily displayed on the dashboard in this way, but potentially baked into a future version of a privately owned sports car. That weather data on a very hyper-local level would be so awesome.
It would be interesting.
So awesome.
Yeah.
And I just saw a presentation last week in Bentonville, Arkansas, an event called Up Summit. Up Ventures is this venture capital fund. And they had one of the speakers is a guy named Brian McClendon. Brian McClendon was the OG leader of Google Earth. And turned Google Earth from prior to Google acquiring it, was Keyhole, was this military GPS system with mapping. And when that became obsolete, Google took it over. He was in charge. And then he created Google Maps.
And I might have met this guy
and
before.
Street View.
I think I met
He's
this
also
guy
a car guy. Drives a Lucid today.
I have met him before.
So he is
Definitely.
like unbeknownst to most people, one of the most influential people in the world. He's brilliant. He's also a really good guy. And so after Dave Maher and I brought the Cannonball record, I got invited to Google to meet him in 2006, seven. And he looked at me, and there was this look on his face like, look at all the things people do with technology when you build it that one could not have predicted what they would do. And he went on to found Niantic, which created Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
So here's a guy who's thinking about maps and the world and isn't necessarily trying to create the final product of he's trying to create the platform upon which products can be created.
Yeah.
And Pokemon, in his presentation, he laid out why autonomous vehicles look the way they do, why LiDAR is necessary, why they are what they are. And then he said, look, Pokemon Go, it was very successful, a multi-billion-dollar game, but was just the first thing one could do with augmented reality. And it's the first really scaling augmented reality product. And then he talked about the APIs that they're making available for the next generation system that would allow people to create their own games, content, whatever, in AR around the Niantic platform. And when I saw him talk like this, I thought to myself, well, the last time I used a product that he had his fingers on in 2006, we created the Cannonball record. What I see when I look at the Apple car display is if we eliminate instead of night mode, we just have drive mode.
Yeah.
And that drive mode took all the data that we don't need, and there was some future product built on top of like what McLennan's doing in Niantic. Human driving will evolve, but it will always be with us.
Yeah.
And the best drivers will be able to exploit technology to become even faster and safer at the same time.
Because they'll have more information.
And none of us want to be 100% safe because that means we never leave the house.
Yeah.
But what we do want is to be safe no matter where we go, and our kids to be safe too. But we don't want to do that at the expense of our freedom. And so for every technology, you want it to be paired with another iteration of it, which preserves our values.
The humanity.
We want to preserve all our values.
Yeah.
The freedom and the safety. And empathy is the glue between the two. Because anybody can have one.
Yeah.
Okay. But your life would be very limited,
Yeah.
and the lives of others will be impacted. But for the two, the empathy.
Have you seen the augmented reality in the Lucid yet?
No.
It's not great. And the limiting factor is actually just the heads-up display being a fairly small window. If someone were to have a heads-up display that utilized more area of the, because basically what happens is you set a destination, and in the heads-up display, your turn-by-turn navigation, it really just kind of does these animated, wormy type arrows that instruct you to, turn this corner here and there, or pick this lane here and there. But it's in a relatively small window where the heads-up display would be.
You drove the EQS.
Yeah.
Did it have such a system?
That had it too.
Yeah, that had the system
that had
where
it too.
it would watch the cars around you and put little, icon indicators when the car was going to move in front of you. Yeah, it was pretty accurate, yeah.
It's okay.
But I didn't find it very helpful, especially like in the daytime, because you can see the car moving into your lane, and it was harder to look for this little blue blob of paint that was underneath the car that was also moving over into your lane.
I mean, I think the limiting factor is the projection unit and the power draw.
Yeah.
That technology is not fully baked, or not baked enough for us to love it.
And the polarized sunglasses conundrum, which is always an issue.
Yeah.
But it seems like a step that we will eventually benefit from, because it's showing that this has a system that can track the movement of another car in real time and project something onto the windshield that we can see.
Did it make you more optimistic about the next generation? Or
it tells me that the car is paying attention, other than like some radar cruise control feels like it only responds when a car is directly in front of your car, and you're accelerating and all of a sudden the car it was moving over. Like, it doesn't read what that car is doing. This system and others like it, they can notice the behavior of that vehicle as it's moving into or out of your lane, and then accelerate or decelerate more like a human would.
Yeah. Thanks for coming down, man. That was
Sure.
a really interesting 2 hours, as usual.
Hey.
There are a couple questions that were more general that we'll save for the crew show on Friday. And obviously, Alex is AlexRoy144 on Twitter. And do you want to plug anything else?
Apex Secret Race Across America, which, by the way, I was just watching SVU, and I decided, because Ice does the narration of the movie, but I thought I knew a lot about him. And then I went and read his wiki.
Oh, it's crazy.
and I started going through all the backlinks.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do we get him to do this movie?
Ice-T has seen some shit.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, when we met him on Bull Run, he was really interesting. Really, really genuinely one of the most interesting people. And so was Coco. She was really smart and really funny and very charismatic and hilarious. They were really nice people. I don't know. Actually, I do know how he got to do that movie, but I won't say it. I won't say it here. That's a funny bar story later. That's not a public consumption show.
All right.
That's it, folks. We're back on Friday with a crew show. We were going to have Joey Seeley from Emotion Engineering come in studio, but he had to go back to Pikes Peak and fix the race car that they broke.
Oh, wait, actually, I got to plug one thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You got
my columns about Risk, board games, autonomous vehicles, all that stuff is on this website, Ground Truth. Just look up Alex Roy, Ground Truth. It's where
the Risk thing is really good. The elevators one is really good.
Just Google Alex Roy elevators or Alex Roy Risk board game.
GroundTruthAutonomy.com.
Yeah.
Is where you find all of Alex's shit. All right. Bye, everybody.